Hello everyone, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Killer Instinct. Thank you guys so much for joining me here today. If you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah and I am your host of Killer Instinct. Before we get started, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly on the podcast every single Wednesday, as well as upload the video version on YouTube on Wednesdays as well. So make sure you are subscribed. Now, you guys, I can't believe I'm even saying this, but we are now in the last week of the Fatal Friendships True Crime category. If you've been following along over the past few months, you know that in each month of this year, we have dedicated it to a new true crime category. And June's was Fatal Friendships. And I feel like that went by in a blink of an eye. But I am very interested to hear what you guys have to say about today's case. This is a case that I had actually never heard of before, and it was one where I could not believe what I was reading, and I have a feeling that you guys are going to feel the same way. I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say in regards to the sentencing of this case, in regards to how the consequences of this case played out. I think you are definitely going to be disturbed. This case has betrayal, backstabbing, secret relationships, secret identities, obsession, and more. And I'm very, very curious to hear what you guys have to say about it. As you can tell by the title of this case, today we are talking about the brutal murder of Cynthia Hoffman. And this case is also referred to as the catfish killings for reasons you will soon understand as we get more into this case. So with that being said, let's jump right on into it today. Cynthia Hoffman was born on October 8th, 1999 in Anchorage, Alaska. She was born to her parents, Timothy and Christy Hoffman. Cynthia came from a big family. She had 4 sisters and 4 brothers. Now, growing up, Cynthia was diagnosed with autism. However, she was high functioning. She graduated from Robert Service High School in 2018 and continued working at local restaurants. She was waitressing, doing different jobs in that regard to make some more money on the side. She also helped her dad out whenever he needed it. Cynthia's dad worked in construction, and he also did handyman jobs here and there, and people referred to Cynthia as her father's right-hand man because she was always going alongside of him, going on different handyman jobs for him, and then that turned into her doing some handyman work on her own, again, to make some extra income that way. Now, Cynthia was also working towards getting her driver's permit, and this was something that was very, very exciting for her. She was excited to have that additional freedom, being able to drive to and from different places and not need to be driven around by people was something that she was really looking forward to. Cynthia was incredibly smart. She was a loving person and someone who was friendly to everyone that she met. She was someone who was determined and motivated to overcome obstacles that were thrown at her. Cynthia knew that she had challenges and struggles, but she did not let that get in the way of what she wanted out of life, and she didn't let it get in the way of her living her life to the fullest. She also just wanted to make her family proud. That was something that was very important to her. She wanted to make her parents proud. She wanted to make everyone around her proud, and she did just that. It was said that Cynthia was definitely daddy's little girl. Her and her father were incredibly close and had a very special bond, as did Cynthia with the rest of her siblings and her mother. Cynthia had a very close bond with her family. Now, this case really begins on June 2nd, 2019, and on this particular day, Cynthia's father, Timothy, had gotten concerned when he realized that he had not heard from Cynthia in several hours. He had been texting her time and time again, however, wasn't getting a response, and that was very much unlike her. Now, all of the Hoffman kids had a cell phone. Timothy would give them all cell phones for safety purposes, and the one rule with this cell phone that Timothy had was that if Timothy called, if their father called them, they were going to pick up the phone. That was the one rule. If dad calls, you answer. And so Timothy knew that Cynthia would not just blatantly ignore her father. She was someone who was very diligent when it came to texting him back or picking up the phone. She knew the rule. She knew that she had to answer her dad. And so for her to not respond at all was concerning. Now, that day on June 2nd, Cynthia was supposed to meet up with her sister to collect some money that Cynthia earned while working on her friend's camper van, and she had texted her dad about that earlier in the day. However, she never showed up to meet her sister, which again, Timothy knew something was very, very wrong. So he called the police to file a missing persons report at this time. However, the police told him that he needed to wait 24 hours before he would be able to file this report. Now, this was very upsetting to Timothy for a multitude of reasons, but one of them being that he really didn't feel like the police were taking him seriously. He didn't feel like the police were really hearing him and listening to him when he was expressing concerns about his daughter. Cynthia had autism. She had developmental delays, and Timothy thought that she was in a very vulnerable state, and he felt like the police weren't catering to that and didn't really seem to be bothered by it. Now, at this point, Timothy decided that he was going to take matters into his own hands. He was going to start reaching out to people himself. He started calling around to all the local news stations, trying to get anyone who would listen to start speaking about Cynthia, start talking about her, get her picture out there, get her name out there, with the hopes that either Cynthia herself would see it or that someone who knew something would see it. Timothy also got on his motorcycle and began riding around all throughout Anchorage, going to all of the places that he thought his daughter would be at. However, she was nowhere to be found. Now, at this point, Timothy decided to start reaching out to some of Cynthia's friends. So he was texting back and forth with some of the friends that Cynthia had, one of which was Cynthia's friend named Angela. Now, Angela actually reached out to Timothy herself, and according to Angela, Angela was with Cynthia that day. When she was texting back and forth with Timothy, she told him that she was with Cynthia earlier that day, however, dropped her off at a park that was referred to as Polar Bear Park at around 4 p.m., but that was the last time that she saw or heard from her. When Angela was going back and forth with Timothy, she expressed her concern over Cynthia being missing. She claimed that Cynthia was her best friend and she hoped that she would be able to come home. She was also giving Timothy a lot of reassurance, saying, I know we're going to find her. I know that she's going to make it back. Now, one thing that did stand out to Timothy when he was texting Angela was that Angela referred to a guy in these text messages with Timothy. She kept saying that Cynthia was talking to some guy and that Angela didn't trust that guy, and she was worried about what could have transpired there because Angela always had a bad feeling about this guy, quote unquote. Now, Timothy was taken aback because as far as he knew, Cynthia was not talking to any guy. She wasn't in a relationship. She wasn't dating. So he was trying to get Angela to elaborate more on whatever it was that she was referring to. However, she stayed silent. So at this point, Timothy is very confused. He's trying to get more clarification, but Angela is not giving it to him. But what Timothy does not know is that he is not texting with a girl named Angela. In fact, Timothy was texting with a different girl named Denali Bremer. Now, Denali was actually a friend of Cynthia's, and the two of them had also met in school. Denali Bremer was born on February 12, 2001 to her mother, Nicole. Now, the majority of Denali's life, she had been living in Anchorage, Alaska with her and her 4 siblings. Denali was the middle child, and according to the other siblings, the upbringing that they had was definitely less than ideal. Denali's sisters have said that the upbringing was very rough and that all of the kids were subjected to neglect by their mother, Nicole. Now, Nicole was a single mom who had multiple boyfriends while the kids were growing up, and it was said that these boyfriends would often partake in the abuse as well and would abuse all of the other siblings, including Denali. Now, in a horrifying turn of events, one of these boyfriends actually ended up murdering Denali's younger sister, Gabrielle, when she was only 2 months old. Now, when this happened, Denali was approximately 18 months old, and afterwards, her and the rest of her siblings were removed from Nicole's care and placed with another adoptive family. Now, Denali and Nicole did end up rekindling and reconnecting about 6 months prior to June 2019, and they were trying to repair their relationship. Denali really did want a relationship with her biological mother. It was something that was very important to her. It was something that she was really passionate about. She wanted to learn and know who her mom was. And Nicole was very willing and wanting to have that same relationship with her daughter. Now, I want to go back to June 2nd, 2019, now that you have a little bit of an understanding and an idea of who Denali Bremer is. So at this point, we're at June 2019. It's now June 3rd because we have surpassed the 24-hour mark of Cynthia being missing. And at this point, the Anchorage Police Department begins their investigation to see what happened to Cynthia. So now in the beginning of the investigation, police are really pushing Cynthia's name out into the public. They're talking about her on local news stations. And at this time, on June 3rd, 2019, police get an unexpected phone call from Nicole, who again is Denali's mother. Now, Nicole had called the Anchorage Police Department and told them that she was very concerned. She said that on the night prior, which was June 2nd, that Denali and another boy named Anthony had gone over to her house that night. So Denali and Anthony go to Nicole's house. She said that when the two of them arrived, Denali seemed a little bit shaken up and she invited the two of them inside. Now, when the two of them were inside and they began talking about their night, that is when Nicole claims that Anthony, the boy that is with her daughter, said that he murdered Cynthia Hoffman that night. Now, Nicole claims that Denali and Anthony left together. They left the house and that she hadn't really heard from Denali since. She hadn't really spoken to her daughter. She hadn't really had a conversation with her. And Nicole claimed that the reason that she was calling to begin with was more so because she was afraid for her own daughter's safety. She's claiming that she watched Denali walk off with this boy who's claiming that he killed another girl earlier that night, and she's worried for the sake and the safety of her own child. Now, Nicole told police at this time that Denali also sometimes went by the name Angela. So she would go by Angela or Denali. It was kind of either or. And when police heard this, they had already spoken to Timothy in regards to some of the text messages that he had sent. And he told them about the text thread with Angela, because again, Angela brought up the fact that Cynthia had been talking to this boy and Angela didn't trust this guy. And it brought a lot of confusion for Timothy. So when he was talking to police, he told them about this text thread. So when police heard that Denali went by the name Angela, it definitely sparked some red flags and suspicion in their brain because now the dots are beginning to connect a little bit. And at this point, police knew that they needed to get answers. And in order to do that, they needed to track down Denali and Anthony. But when doing so, they learned that Anthony's real name isn't actually Anthony. His real name was Caden McIntosh. Caden was 16 years old at the time and was said to be living on the streets. So the name Anthony, again, was just another fake name to conceal Caden's identity. Now, on June 5th, 2019, so just 3 days after Cynthia was reported missing, Denali and Caden were both arrested. And when that happened, they confessed immediately. They immediately came forward and said that they were the ones who murdered Cynthia, and they agreed to tell police everything that happened. But not only that, Denali agreed to lead police to Cynthia's body. Police discovered Cynthia's body located at Thunderbird Falls. Thunderbird Falls is a popular hiking trail in Anchorage, Alaska, and police discovered her body in the river at Thunderbird. They found duct tape around her hands, her ankles, and her mouth, and she had been shot in the back of the head. When the autopsy was performed, it was shown that there were no signs of sexual assault. So now the police had positively identified Cynthia's body. They also had Denali and Caden in custody. They knew that they needed to get to the bottom of what happened. And surprisingly, Denali was very willing to talk. Now, according to Denali, she claimed that she had been having an online relationship with someone named Tyler. Now, Tyler and Denali met online, and the two of them began a very dark and twisted relationship. Denali claimed that Tyler told her that he lived in Kansas and was incredibly wealthy, which was very appealing to Denali. Tyler claimed that he came into his wealth from winning the lottery. Denali claimed that from the very beginning of her and Tyler's relationship, he was very open and forward about asking and requesting very heinous and disturbing things from Denali. Essentially, what began happening is Tyler was asking Denali to carry out various different assaults, videotape them, and send him those assaults and attacks. One of the first attacks that Tyler wanted Denali to carry out was sexually assaulting an 8-year-old. Another included assaulting a 14-year-old. One of the messages that Tyler sent Denali was, quote, "Are you going to the 14-year-old?" And Denali responded with, "Gonna go buy weed first. Gonna get her high so she doesn't fight me. I love you. Soon we can rape together." End quote. So Denali had admitted to police that she had gotten into this routine and this pattern of really doing everything that Tyler had been asking. Anything that Tyler wanted her to do, she would do it and send him the video of it afterwards. After the initial 2 assaults, one on the 8-year-old and then on the 14-year-old, Tyler upped his ante. And this is when he asked Denali to rape and murder someone, and claimed that he would actually give Denali a little bit of an incentive. Tyler said that if Denali carried out murdering and raping someone, that he would give her $9 million. Now, almost without hesitation, when Denali read this, she instantly agreed, but she knew she was not going to be able to carry this out alone. So she began recruiting others who were going to help her carry out the murder. In total, there were 6 people who helped orchestrate and carry out this murder, including Denali and Tyler. However, there were 4 other friends of Denali that she recruited. One of those was Caden McIntosh, and another was a boy named Caleb Leland. Denali promised Caleb $500 if he would let her use her car to carry out the murder, and he agreed to do this. Now, according to Denali, she claimed that the reason that she chose Cynthia as her victim, because again, Tyler did not ask Denali to kill Cynthia specifically. Denali was the one who chose Cynthia as her victim, and according to Denali, she claimed that she assumed that Cynthia would be the easiest target for a multitude of reasons. She claimed the first reason that Cynthia would be an easy target was because that they were already best friends. So it wouldn't be hard to lure Cynthia away into a private area or an area where people weren't going to be walking around. It wouldn't be suspicious for Denali to ask Cynthia to hang out. She just didn't think that it was going to be difficult to have to get Cynthia alone. That was the first reason. And the second reason was because Denali was very aware of Cynthia's mental state, and she knew that Cynthia would be more vulnerable. She would be less assuming. She would probably be less suspicious of what was going on up until those very last few moments. Now, Denali claims that on June 2nd, 2019, she had asked Cynthia to hang out. She claimed that her, Cynthia, and Caden drove in Caleb's car and were driving around and smoking marijuana. Now, Timothy claims that Cynthia would not do this. He claims that it's very out of character for her, that she never partook in any of that behavior beforehand. So I did want to put that out there too, that Timothy does not believe that Cynthia was partaking in that. Now, Denali then claimed that the 3 of them drove to Thunderbird Falls, where they parked the car and got out and began walking on a suggested hiking path more towards where the river ran through Thunderbird. Now, Denali claimed that while they were walking on this suggested path, they ended up making a little bit of a detour and going down an area that was not paved out. It was basically off of the beaten path, very secluded, and that is exactly what she was looking for. She claimed that once the three of them got there, she began joking around with Cynthia and basically saying that they were going to be playing a prank. They told Cynthia that they were doing a little bit of a joke, a little bit of a prank, and they took out duct tape. At this point, they began wrapping Cynthia's wrists in the duct tape and then her ankles. Now, Denali claimed that sometime through this process, Cynthia began realizing that this was not a joke at all and something far more sinister. Denali said that Cynthia threatened to call the police and threatened to call her dad. However, at this point, they put duct tape over Cynthia's mouth, and Denali confessed to pulling a gun on her best friend. Now, even though Denali was the one who pulled the gun initially, Caden claimed that he then took the gun from Denali, pointed it at Cynthia, and shot her in the back of the head. Now, while Caden was carrying this out, Denali was recording. She was recording the entire murder on Snapchat and sending the videos to Tyler. After shooting Cynthia, they claimed that they then threw her body into the river. Now, Caden told police that when they threw Cynthia into the river, her body was twitching, but he didn't know if that was due to her drowning or if it was from the gunshot wound. Afterwards, the two, Denali and Caden, went back to the car and told each other that they were going to make a pact. That pact was going to be that they weren't going to tell anyone what just happened, which obviously did not last very long, but also that they were going to reach out to Cynthia's family and claim that the last time that they saw her was at Polar Bear Park. So they're basically establishing an alibi between the two of them. Now, after the murder had occurred, Denali then sent text messages to Tyler. In those text messages, she said, quote, "I wish I never made a deal with you in the first place. We can meet, but once I see a cop, I'm telling him or her that I made you rape people and kill Cece," end quote. I will say that text message is a little bit contradictory because if what Denali is saying is true, then it would be the other way around. It wouldn't be her telling Tyler that he needed to rape and murder people. It was the other way around, which is what Denali was saying to police, that Tyler was the one that was persuading her to do these things. Now, this ended up being one of many alarming text messages that police saw on Denali's cell phone. They also saw a Snapchat video that Denali had taken after the murder where she said, quote, "I just want to thank everyone that's been there for me my whole life and these past few years and everything. I fucked up. I know I did. If I could take back what I've done, I can't. I'm sorry, everybody. My family, my friends. I guess you will hear from me when you hear from me, but I won't be back for a long time. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it." End quote. Now, in this video, you can also see Caden in the background, and he is pacing in the back of the video. So that shows not only through his confession, but also through this physical evidence of this video that Caden was also there. So this was one of several Snapchat videos that police found on Denali's phone. Like I mentioned earlier, Denali had taken video of the murder itself, of Cynthia's very last few moments, and had sent that to Tyler, and they were able to recover those videos. So as police were sitting there and talking to Denali and listening to her tell them all about Tyler, how he's this wealthy millionaire from Kansas, he has all this money, and he's been persuading her to do these horrible, horrific acts, police start doing a little bit more digging into who Tyler actually is, because for police, the red flags were going off everywhere. Not only did they not believe that Tyler was who he was saying that he was, but they also knew that if there was someone who was out there who was persuading someone else to go out and record these horrific acts and assault people, that person needed to be behind bars. And when they started doing a little bit more digging into Tyler, they realized that Tyler was not the person that he was claiming to be. Tyler was actually 21-year-old Darren Darren Schmiller. Darren was from Indiana, not Kansas as he had portrayed, and he definitely was not a millionaire. He was living in his grandfather's basement, didn't have a job, and spent most of his time playing video games and watching TV at home when he wasn't engaging in catfishing people. According to the people who grew up with Darren, they claimed that he had been catfishing people for years prior to this murder under different names and accounts. He had always asked underage girls for inappropriate pictures of themselves all through his childhood and then leading into adulthood as well. Some of the girls who had talked to Darren's profiles claimed that he had asked them to send inappropriate photos of their children. So if he was speaking to a mom or someone who had a child, he would ask them to send him those photographs. Now, before Darren got investigated for the murder of Cynthia and his involvement in it, he was actually investigated by police for a separate child pornography ring. However, he ended up getting off of those charges. That investigation really didn't lead to anything. Now, police did track down Darren and arrested him immediately after learning about his involvement with Cynthia Hoffman, and he confessed to everything. Now, he corroborated Denali's story, claiming that he did say that he would pay her $9 million to kill someone, and even that they had plans to kill a second person after Cynthia. So Darren is really telling police that this was only the beginning of what was going to possibly be a murder spree and potentially creating a serial killer in Denali, because they had plans to murder other people after this as well. Now, Denali, she had no idea that Tyler was not who he claimed to be, that Tyler was Darren, who he really was, that he didn't have all of this money. And she learned about this after she was arrested. So you can only imagine her surprise when she learned the truth about who Tyler really was. Now, all in all, Denali, Caden, Caleb, Darren, as well as two unnamed teenagers, because they were underage at the time that they were arrested in connection to Cynthia's murder. As I mentioned earlier, there were 4 friends that Cynthia had recruited. One of those was Caden, the other one was Caleb, and the other 2 were the unnamed teenagers. Now, Caden was also underage at the time. He was 16 years old. However, the courts did charge him as an adult. Now, all 6 of them were charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and murder in the second degree, and all 6 of them initially pled not guilty. Now, during her trial specifically, Denali admitted to the court that she had a daughter herself, which was a very big surprise to everyone. This was not public knowledge up until this point, and she claimed that she did not want her daughter to grow up thinking that her mom was a killer because she did not see herself as that. She didn't see herself as a killer. Now, Denali's defense during court claimed that they were hoping that Denali would receive a lesser sentence or not as harsh of a sentence because Denali was not the one who physically killed Cynthia. Caden himself had admitted that he was the one that pulled the trigger that ended Cynthia's life. And so the defense was hoping that this would work in Denali's favor. However, the prosecution did not agree on this whatsoever. The prosecution said, quote, "She executed Cynthia Hoffman in a murder for hire plot. She conspired with numerous other individuals in and outside of Alaska, including juveniles, forever altering everybody's life. She may not have pulled the trigger, but this would never have happened if it weren't for Denali Bremer," end quote. Now, ultimately, Denali did plead guilty. She took a plea and was given 99 years in prison. The judge said that her actions were, quote, "cold, calculated, and carried out to a T," end quote. Now, Darren also pleaded guilty to 1 count of first-degree murder and was sentenced to 99 years. The judge claimed that Darren, quote, "did it for power, for control, and for his fetishes," end quote. Now, Caleb Leland also pled guilty to first-degree murder, and it was said that his sentencing was set for June 10th of this year. However, I was not able to find any sentence that he was given within the past few weeks because, again, that would have just been several weeks ago at this point. However, I was not able to find that out. Caden also pled guilty and was sentenced to 99 years as well. Now, Timothy, Cynthia's father, he was there day in and day out during all of these trials, during all of the sentencing. He wanted to be there and made sure that he was and showed up for Cynthia every single day to honor his daughter. Now, something that I do want to mention is that Timothy was very passionate about motorcycles and riding motorcycles. And as a part of Cynthia's celebration for life after she was murdered, he invited other bikers to join him in a ride for Cynthia. And sadly, just over this past Memorial Day weekend, so just several weeks ago, Timothy ended up passing away after he got into a motorcycle accident. He got into the accident while taking a motorcycle ride in honor of Cynthia. It was in honor of the 5-year anniversary of her death, and he was transported to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. And I just needed to mention that because he was such an advocate for Cynthia throughout this entire case. He was such an advocate for her afterwards, honoring her in every way that he could. And it's just incredibly tragic that his life also had ended so recently and in the way that it did. So I did want to mention that as well to kind of sum up this case in its entirety. And that, you guys, is the case of Cynthia Hoffman. I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say about this one. Please let me know in the comments below. And with that being said, you guys, that is all for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Killer Instinct. Again, if you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah, and I'm your host of Killer Instinct. Make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. We will be back next week with a brand new true crime category for you guys. And until then, stay safe. Bye, guys.